Welcome to Northminster Church Online. We're excited that you guys are here to worship with us this morning. If you have not done so already, let us know you're worshiping with us in the comment section and say hey to someone else. If this is your first time with us, we want to know. You can let us know by liking the comment below that says, "This is my first time worshiping with you," or you can go over to northminsterchurch.org/new and let us know there, and we'll send you guys a little gift in the mail. We're excited that you guys are here. Let's worship.
Hey Northminster, Greg here at the church. Kind of pumped today. This is a theme I'm just jacked up about. So got my Bible, got my coffee, got pencils, monitor, papers, notes. We're ready to go. So we're continuing our message series called Big Bad Wolf, living at the intersection of faith and fear. And last week we looked at Judges 6 and we walked in the shoes of Israelites who were living at that very intersection. And so today we're going to continue that story, picking up at verse 7. And we're going to provide, or actually God is providing us with some anchors. So that's why we called this sermon the Anchored In mindset. And when I think of the anchors, I'm not thinking of a anchor on a ship. I'm thinking of anchors that we put in a cliff face when we're doing rock climbing. Some people call it protection. The idea is, well, I can't get you off of the face. I can't get you out of the situation of fear. But God can provide anchors that help you to cushion your fall, to make sure you only fall 15 feet instead of 55 feet. And so one of those anchors is going to be belief. It's going to be clarity about what we believe. And that's what we're going to talk about today. Last week I stated, and I almost said suggested, but I really think I want to say stated, that fear is the greatest tool of the enemy and the most common tool of the enemy that the church, or really society at large, refuses to talk about. It's that which should not be named. Never let them see you sweat. Never talk about fear. Never admit that there is something out there that is bigger than you. Why is it that we're so afraid to talk about it? I got two books that have helped me. First, this one. You know, this is one of the few books out there that talks a lot about fear. If you did a word study, a little search, you would find out the word fear or terror comes up almost as much as the word love. I mean, that's incredible. God thinks fear is a big deal. God thinks we should talk about it, but we don't. And, you know, it's evidenced elsewhere in that you can hardly find a serious book on faith and fear or leadership and fear if you're not a believer. And so this is it. This is the only one I found that qualifies as serious. And this book are shaping this sermon series. So this is called A Failure of Nerve. Very hard book to read, trying to create some fear there. But fantastic. Some people may not like it because Edwin Friedman, the author, is a little down on empathy, and empathy is everything today. I like to think I've got Brene Brown talking in one ear and Edwin Friedman talking in another ear. Brene Brown cheering on empathy and Friedman cheering on responsibility. And that allows me to be balanced in life. Or I can just read this book and that works. So just wanted to give credit to Edwin Friedman. If you read the book, which would be a challenge, and possibly one of those goals, the COVID-19 goals, to actually read A Failure of Nerve. That would be something to be proud of, an accomplishment. So anyway, last week the enemy, we identified, or the Bible identified it as the Midianites, or the people of the East, or the Amalekites. Those three names come forward. And I just want to say that the Midianites are still around. Actually, I said that last week. We're still Like them, we're not in our caves hiding, but we are in our houses hiding from a virus. And the sad thing is, when we conquer this virus, when we create a vaccine for this virus, there will be other Midianites to replace them. I mean, there are even today other illnesses, other diseases, other tests, other delays, other waiting on the doctors to call. There's just like in every age, there's relationships that are broken or faulty. Divorces happen. That's like a Midianite. There's mental illness. That's a huge, scary, invisible Midianite. There's crime. There's abuse. There's neglect. Much more visible Midianites, but awfully damaging. There's hunger. There's insecurity. There's all these things. The voice of fear always exists. And so it's a super important thing for Christians to say, what do we do with that voice? What do we do when we play a game of chicken with fear? I gotta believe God makes a difference, that somehow it's easier for us because of that incredible resource, a relationship with God. So anyway, I think we should expect fear always to be chanting out there. You know how it is in sports. When a team has a goal, they have a special song. Or when a good player walks up to the batter's box, they have a walk-up song. And usually it's supposed to drive the other fans crazy, remind them that all hope is lost. And so, in Chicago, we had Chelsea's Dagger for the Blackhawks games. And it was just a blast to sing that song when the Blackhawks actually won. And you didn't really sing it, you just went da na 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 na, something like that. I forget what it was, but you can look it up on YouTube. And the Last Dance is on. Do you know how fun it was to be a Chicagoan down in Texas in my college years when Michael Jordan was stomping on the court? I always thought if I wasn't going to be a pastor, I wanted to be that guy who announced the Bulls. They had that music again, do, 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 do. And then that announcer went, and now, from North Carolina, Michael Jordan. And that had to be so fulfilling. But it was that chanting, that constant voice. Every time we watch the news, we hear the chant of fear. Every time we read the news, we hear that chant of fear. Every time we wonder if we got a face mask with us, we hear the chant of fear. I'm not saying we shouldn't be afraid. I am. I'm aware. I don't need to be any more afraid. There are always going to be those 10,000 crazy people, those foolish people who absolutely won't take the Midianites seriously. But most of us are completely aware, and we don't need 24 hours of news coverage reminding us that that virus is out there. I think of this story Connie always used to share, still does, and I tried to get her to share it, but she had other commitments today. Do you know that show Friday Night Lights about Odessa Permian football in Texas? Maybe you heard it, maybe you don't. Well, it was just in Texas. High school football is everything. And Connie was actually, she lived Friday Night Lights. So their team, Arlington Heights High School, was playing Odessa Permian for the state semifinals. So the winner was going to go to state. Arlington Heights, the Yellow Jackets, were winning until the last 30 seconds. And the way Connie tells it, I don't know if it's exaggerated or not, in that last 2 minutes, they started hearing quietly at first, Mojo, Mojo, Mojo. And then it got louder, Mojo, Mojo. And then the feet started stamping, Mojo, Mojo. And it was that chanting, that taunting, that cold voice of fear. And Connie says, It felt inevitable when you heard that somehow they were going to lose. And they did lose in the last 30 seconds. And there were tears and gnashing of teeth and tearing of clothes and all that kind of stuff. But we are still hearing that voice of fear today. But our Midianites, they don't just threaten the final score of an important football game, an important high school football game. They threaten our lives and our livelihoods. And it's a big deal. The bummer is when this virus is over and done with, there will be other Midianites to replace it. It's the way of the world. If you look at Judges 9, you'll find out another bully with a big bat comes along and creates fear for the children of God. And then another one comes, and then another one comes, and then another one comes, and has always come. It's just the way of a fallen world. But also, we need to know as Christians that fear sells, so it will always be magnified. I mean, it's magnified by the news, it's magnified by politicians, it's magnified everywhere. Bankers magnify it, insurance agents magnify it, Amazon magnifies it when they sell 2 items left, buy it now. Car salespeople magnify it, the church has magnified it. Do you want to go to hell? We are always tempted to be fearmongers, and so we always have to have a faith equipped to handle fear. So, what's a believer to do? I'd say anchor in. I believe in my core of being that God makes a difference, that Christians, followers of Jesus, can handle fear differently, can respond to fear differently. And our job is to find that difference. I always assumed that conquering fear was something that some people could do because they had natural courage or natural faith. They had super courage or wonder faith. They were just, they had the right DNA. And if you didn't have the right DNA, what you did is made it a matter of will. You just sucked it up and acquired the courage and acquired the faith and faked it till you made it. I guess that's fake it till you make it. And just pretended. But that doesn't sound like an anchor. That sounds like deception. So, wouldn't it be great if there was another resource that wasn't for extraordinary people, but ordinary people who have regular fears, regular worries, regular concerns, children and parents that they worry about, that would help them live out their faith in the valley of fear? So here's what I want you to do. I want you to let go of that overwhelming task of finding courage and faith that doesn't seem to be there. Just punt. Just drop it. Let go of it. Make it a second or third strategy. But absolutely let go of it as the first strategy. And what I want you to do instead is simply seek the clarity that is available. Okay? Just simply seek the clarity that is available. You will find out the truth. The clarity will set you free. So imagine this situation. This actually happens to me a lot. A person who you respect comes up to you and says, I'll pretend they're talking to me, Greg, I really need to talk to you. And I say, okay, when? They say, I got time in 2 weeks. And I'm thinking, great, I'll worry about this for 2 weeks. So what I do now is say, well, hey, give me a heads up. Tell me what you wanted to talk about. So I'm not worrying about it for 2 weeks. That way I get some clarity. Maybe they want to talk about their vacation. Maybe they want to talk about a friend of theirs. Or maybe they want to talk about some way I frustrated them or angered them. But at least I will know and won't worry about the unknown for 2 weeks. Just seek the clarity. Think about how easy this is. So, I want to give you a challenge. Maybe this is a COVID-19 goal. Try to figure out what percentage of Americans have COVID-19 today. That would really help us to decide, am I magnifying these fears in my own head? So I would think that it'd be something like 10%. Maybe they say 50 or 70% is what we should expect. So you know where we're at right now? Because I did the math. 0.3%. So doing the math is seeking clarity. They do this all the time. Like you can find out that you have, if you eat white bread, twice as much chance of contracting cancer as if you didn't. But then you find out, you do the math, that you have like a 1 in 10 billion chance of contracting cancer. And now you have a 1 in 5 billion chance of contracting cancer, both of which are a little bit remote. But do the math. Maybe you'll find out the odds aren't quite in your favor as you thought, but at least you will know. If you've thought you've frustrated, angered a friend, make the call. Find out. I got the feeling you were upset. What's going on? Did I do something? If you're feeling like something in your body has changed and you don't have any energy anymore, go visit a doctor. Go find out, get clarity. If you have friends, you can talk about your fears and gain some perspective. You can create a balance sheet of your assets and liabilities, what resources you have, and what liabilities you have. Seeking clarity is super biblical. Just look at the first page of the Bible. It's all about who our God is and who we are. A God who is super creative, super powerful, a fan of order, relational in nature, and we are people who are made in the image of God. Holy cow, we're doing negative self-talk all the time. But we are made in the image of God. Seeking clarity is one of the great purposes of Scripture, or providing clarity. In the text we read about, we're about to read about, the Israelites are going to find clarity through an unnamed prophet. So let's turn to that text. It's Judges 6, verse 7. It picks up right where we left off. And it says, when the Israelites cried to the Lord on account of the Midianites, the Lord sent a prophet to the Israelites. And he said to them, thus says the Lord, the God of Israel, I led you up from Egypt and brought you out of the house of slavery. And I delivered you from the hands of the Egyptians and from the hands of all who oppressed you, and drove them out before you, and gave you their land. And I said to you, I am the Lord your God. You shall not pay reverence to the gods of the Amorites in whose land you live, but you have not given heed to my voice. Now I want to point out some things. This unnamed prophet did not provide clarity about the threat, which is what we're doing 24 hours a day today. I mean, think about it. If I asked the kids at our church to draw a picture of coronavirus, I'll bet every one of them could do it. But if I asked the same question, could you draw a picture that describes God? Could we do that? Do we know more about the threat than we know about the help? The prophet wants us to anchor in to the help. So what do we learn about the help, God, in these few verses, just 4 verses? First, God is engaged. God is involved. God is active in the world. Do you believe that? Did you hear the verbs led, delivered, brought out? God is active. Do you believe that? Most don't. I heard a politician last week say that God has nothing to do with the successes that we're having against coronavirus. Notice I didn't say the name. Don't want to say the name. Might have been a bad day for that politician. Might have been just trying to encourage us to do our job. But wow, what an inactive God he believes in. Second thing, God is more powerful, if this verse is true, than the most powerful force on earth, the Egyptians at that time. Do you believe that? Is God more powerful than coronavirus? God cares about our circumstances. This is the third thing. Do you believe that? That God actually cares what's happening in your home, in your neighborhood, in your 401k. I'm not a prosperity guy, but he cares. Also, we learn fourthly that God is not a fan of slavery. Just as there are Midianites today, there are also pharaohs. Things, people that want to enslave us. It's out there. Fifthly, we learn that God desires a personal relationship. He tells us his name. So when you see the word Lord in all caps in the Bible, that is not a title. That's a reference to his name. Just like my name is Greg. When we see Lord in all caps, that's the way the Jews and the Bible has described the name of God. And he also said, he also talks about covenant, which is another way of talking about relationship. And then on top of all these things, we also hear that God has expectations. He wants to be in a faithful relationship with us, that we're faithful to him as he is faithful to us. He wants us to have a dialogue where he listens to us, cares about our situation, but we also listen to him. Now, you may think these beliefs are nothing in the face of corona. You may think they're just vapor. You may think they're just a mirage. We're just fooling ourselves. But I'd ask you to listen to a guy who lived through Nazi Germany named Viktor Frankl. Wrote one of the top 100 books to be read, Man in the Search for Meaning. And he survived 4 concentration camps. So he might be one of the few people, there might be very few people in the world who know what it is to suffer, know what it is to face fear, know what it is to face the Midianite, like Viktor Frankl. And he said the only thing the Midianite could not take from him was his belief that provided him meaning, that allowed him to walk through the darkest nights of his life. These beliefs, they matter. They are like anchors on a rock climbing wall. God doesn't seem to take us off the cliff. But these beliefs, they're the anchors that keep us safe. Paul said something a lot like Viktor Frankl, or maybe we should say Viktor Frankl said something a lot like Paul. When Paul was reflecting on suffering and death and hardships in life, he said these words, "For we walk by faith, not by sight." If you want to walk faithfully in the face of fear, in the valley of fear, then get to know your help. Get clarity about your help. Find out who your God is. Spend time in the Word. Is it crazy to say spend as much time learning about God as you do about coronavirus? Get in a small group. We're doing them by Zoom. You can get in right after this service. I know there's a Zoom group meeting right after the service. And if you're interested in it, all you have to do is tell us, and we'll find a way to get you involved. Join with others. Make it a priority. Seek the clarity that is yours. Amen.
Thanks for worshiping with us this morning. If you'd like to continue to support the ministry and mission of Northminster Church, head over to northminsterchurch.org/give. As always, make sure you've liked Northminster Church on Facebook, you've downloaded the Northminster app, and bookmarked northminsterchurch.org to stay up to date with everything Northminster. Have a great weekend.